Hello again everybody, Freedom Fighter checking in, hope you're good. I just wanted to make a video today about some past experiences that I've had and also reflecting on what's happened in America with the Stewart family. I'll start by going back to autumn 1990. That's when just one day I saw a Jehovah's Witness I knew walking down the road, said hello, invited them in, and a Bible study was started. This person lived north of the town. I lived in town centre, and because I continued to study with them, when I was ready to go to meetings, I travelled north and went to their hall. It wasn't far, maybe 15-20 minutes. So carried on with the study, was there for a while, attended meetings regularly, and I noticed that the organisation said try and go to your own nearby congregation, go to the congregation that's in your territory. So I thought, well, I'll heed the advice, that's what they want us to do, that's what they're asking of us. So I went to my nearby congregation. But I should add that the congregation I first attended, I mean, it must have been a model congregation. Good meeting attendance every week, every meeting. I would say there was at least 8 elders, might have been more. Similar number with pioneers. On top of that, there was a good number of regular auxiliary pioneers, and just everything about the congregation was, was doing well. When that congregation sung, I mean, in the summertime when the doors and windows were open, you heard them down the road. Good field service attendance. Like I said, a model congregation. And as a newbie, I figured that all congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses were like that. So anyway, going to this congregation downtown, I figured, well, I expected the same. No, what a shocker. I mean, it was convenient for me to go to that congregation. I could literally walk there probably in 5 minutes from where I lived. But from the minute you even walked through the doors, it was just like this still dead vibe in the air. And near the start of the meeting, the hall was empty, and I thought, it will fill out. Sometimes people just kind of pile in late, and no, it didn't happen. The hall was half empty, and there were 3 pioneers, 3 regular pioneers, and fair play to them 3. They were strong-spirited. They were dedicated to the organisation, and they did everything letter of the law. And they were very encouraging individuals, as were a handful of the elders. But despite all that, there was just no life in that congregation. I was there for 6 months. I moved house, and boy, was I glad to get out of there. And actually ended up in the same territory to the original Kingdom Hall, so I was more than happy to go back there, well pleased. But I reflected, on my experience of the town centre congregation, and all I could conclude was that there was no Holy Spirit with that congregation. I didn't know the whys and wherefores of the situation, but I just knew there was no Holy Spirit there. Anyway, myself, I had auxiliary pioneered up until baptism, and as soon as I was baptised in March 92, I was able to qualify to regular pioneer. So yeah, jumped at the chance straight away to join the regular pioneer ranks. But I only ever had one first contact Bible study. It was with an older man. I'd met him whilst we were working the tower blocks in the area. His name was Arthur, and I presented my magazines, and one of them had 1914 splashed on the front of it in big numbers. And this caught his attention. He had actually been born in that year. So, yeah, he invited us in, and we had a very pleasant conversation with him, and a Bible study was started. So, I went back every week. One week I took an elder along. The following week I'd go with a ministerial servant, and it was alternating like that. These brothers were older brothers, nearer his age. The elder was, I'd say, about 70 years old. The ministerial servant, I'd say he was about mid to late 50s, no more than 60. So, yeah, the study was going well. And then one time I met Arthur, and he asked me about a brother, because where he lived, halfway up the tower block, he had a good view of, you know, the estate around him, and I didn't live too far from that estate and was there regularly using the shops and on the ministry and whatever. And he'd seen me out on the ministry with a brother, which didn't happen too often. Obviously, I worked with his sisters most of the time, but you know, helping each other out to get the time in at the end of the month. I worked with his brother a few times, and Arthur had seen me, and he questioned me about this. He thought that I was courting with this brother, and just the way that he asked me, and he just seemed just a little bit, you know, too concerned about it. So I went away, and obviously I decided the best thing to do would be to hand this study over to the brothers that I'd been taking along. Leave it with them. And so, yeah, I saw Arthur at the meetings still, and had a few little words with him. But what happened one time, Arthur came and he complained to me that he was walking to the meetings. You know, he was 79 years old, and he had a good walk on him. He walked with vigour, you know. He walked with vigour, and it wasn't too far from where he lived. The hall was probably about a half-hour walk, but come on, at the end of the day, he was a 79-year-old man, and walking in the cold and in the dark to come to the Kingdom Hall, it shouldn't have been happening, really. I don't know, I couldn't really help him out myself. I wasn't driving. I knew how to drive, I wasn't driving. I didn't have a car on the road, so I couldn't really help him out myself with that situation. Eventually it was sorted out. There was a family who lived on the estate. They picked him up and took him home from the meetings. But that wasn't the last of it, because Arthur came to complain to me again, because he had been coming regular to meetings, and he said, nobody's sitting with me. I mean, what can I say to that? I mean, despite our age gap, it was about 50 years age gap between us. You know, he'd obviously grown a bit too attached to me, and I didn't feel like it was the right thing for me to, you know, say, come and sit next to me every meeting, Arthur. I spoke to the brothers. The elder said to me, well, I can't sit with him because I sit with my wife. I mean, is that a lame excuse, or is that a lame excuse? He had two grown adult children at home and his wife. I spoke to the ministerial servant, and he said, well, I can't sit with him. I've got my duties to do in the Kingdom Hall. Again, lame excuse. Because even if he did have to get up and do this and do that, I mean, he sat back down again. So, what could I do? What could I do? What more could I do? Should I have told these brothers and been directing them, look, you need to sit with Arthur? And actually as well, there was a kingdom ministry. And I looked at the elder during this, before this study. I thought, well, he's going to get the message now, and he's going to, you know, pull his socks up and sort himself out and invite his Bible study to sit with him at the Kingdom Hall. But it never happened. Neither of them, the elder or the ministerial servant, they did not sit with Arthur. Anyway, one meeting, this was an evening meeting, it finished about 9 o'clock. I'd stay and talk till 1, 2, as you do. The sister of the family who brought Arthur to and from the meetings, she came up to me and she could hardly talk. She was crying. She was struggling to breathe. She was near hyperventilation. Couldn't get her words out. Eventually she calmed down. And she related to me that Arthur had been hit by a car and knocked down outside the Kingdom Hall, and he'd gone to hospital, been taken off an ambulance. So I visited Arthur a few times in hospital. Within the week he'd passed away. He died on his 80th birthday, if I remember correctly. There were a few birthday cards by his bedside cabinet. And the whole thing was very sad indeed.